Well, I've always been favorable to God since I was a child. I'm a Catholic from Italy. My grandmother used to take me to Mass every morning when I was a child. I liked the idea of God. I liked the idea of the Supreme. I didn't take anything for granted, but I didn't find any reciprocation in the church. And the only reciprocation I really found was when I saw the devotees for the first time here in Amsterdam. I think it was a Koyananda Swami and two brahmacharis doing Harinam. And I was sitting in a cafe nearby here, and I said to my friend, "Wow, what's that? That's far out." And they said, "Oh, something from California, Hare Krishna." And the next day they brought someone to my house. His name was Alex Kulik from San Diego. And he brought me a Krishna book. And he showed me a picture of Prabhupada on the Krishna book. Prabhupada smelling the champak flower. And he said, "This man is the most advanced person on this planet." He said, "You have to be a vegetarian." I said, "I'm already a vegetarian." He said, "No gambling, a couple of other rules, not so important." So that was my introduction to Krishna. I was already 30 years old. So when I joined, I spent a year in Holland, and I went to Italy. I was already 10 years older than the average age of the devotees, so I became a leader almost immediately. And I spent the first 5 years in India traveling in Bengal. Well, I was serving in Italy, Sankirtan leader. Prabhupada came to France, but they wouldn't let me go to see him because I wasn't senior enough. Actually, I was collecting too much. So I made up my mind that I was going to go to India to see Prabhupada. So somehow I managed to get away. It's a long story there. But there was a GBC resolution that any devotee who wanted to go to India should be facilitated. So based on that, I convinced Bhagavan to let me go. So end of October 76, I went to Vrindavan to see Prabhupada. I never seen him before. So I arrived in Vrindavan at this time in the evening. And I came through the side door of the Krishna Balaram temple. Prabhupada was sitting under the tree, very famous tree. And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and I felt this wonderful feeling in my heart. So I stayed in Vrindavan for about a month and a half. He was giving classes every day. And the temple commander said, "Ananda, if you stay here, work with me, I'll recommend you for second initiation," because I'd only got first initiation by mail 6 months before. So we made that deal. So Prabhupada gave me second initiation. So it was a big initiation ceremony, but only two of us were getting Gayatri, myself and Gurukul boy. So when I went in to see Prabhupada, he paid my dandavats, sat down, and then he put the Brahmin thread around my neck, and he said, do you know how to count? I said, "Yes, Prabhupada." I didn't even finish saying, "Yes, Prabhupada, show me." So I was so excited I made a mistake with my fingers. So he leant over with his left hand and gently slapped me on my wrist. He said, "Not like that, like this." So that was one lesson I learned, don't be too smart. This person can read your mind. So I got my second initiation, and then every day Prabhupada would have Bhagavatam class. In the evening he would sit under the tree, and there was a new devotee joined, a Swami from some other group. Prabhupada initiated him, Prem Yogi, and he was translating the Bhagavatam into Hindi. So there was a session where Prabhupada, I think it was Yashodananda, would read it in English, and Prem Yogi would read it in Hindi, and Prabhupada would listen. So this was the daily program. I did get to go on one morning walk with him, and the morning walk was inside the premises, mainly in the Gurukul building. They were building the Gurukul, Krishna Balaram temple was already finished, but the Gurukul was under construction. So we were going around the construction, up and down the scaffolding, here and there. And there was this constant monologue from his manager, GBC, how wonderful everything was. Prabhupada, this is wonderful, that is wonderful. Prabhupada didn't say anything, he just kept walking, tick, tick, tick. After about half an hour of this propaganda, he picked up his cane and he stuck it into the wall, and the plaster crumbled off. And he said, is this wonderful? Tick, tick, tick. Then he saw some cement left out in the wet. Is that wonderful? Then a pile of dirt. Is that wonderful? He made time stop. It was so much pressure. And in the end, there was nothing left to do but to cry. And to his credit, the GBC started crying, the local GBC. Tears came to his eyes. But I learned my lesson, which is hype doesn't cut it with His divine grace. So I learned that lesson. The next thing I learned from Prabhupada was how powerful he was and how much he wanted to preach, how much his desire was to bring Krishna to the common man, to everyone. Because in the evening there was a Pandal program. Prabhupada spoke first, and then we left with him, and then after him the other sannyasis, all Mayavadis that were invited. One of them was the Satchitananda from the Shivananda mission in Rishikesh, all impersonalists. So Prabhupada found out that the traveling party I was with, we had a movie projector and a Hare Krishna People movie. And he found out that I was the only one who knew how to work this cinema projector. So he called me into his room and he said, you know how to do the Krishna to cinema? I said, yes, Prabhupada. He says, good. He says, every evening you stay on the pandal until the last speaker is finished. Then before everybody leaves, you put on the cinema. I said, but Prabhupada, the Mayavadis. He said, don't worry, it will not affect you. So I sat up there, I put up the screen, and you know, in those days there was no TV, there was no satellite communications. So a movie like that was a big thing for the Indian audience. And Prabhupada really liked that movie. It was Yaduba's first movie, and it was actually very, very good for India. We used it for years to make life members. And I'm really a believer that Prabhupada is to be known in his books. In Vrindavan, when there was a 24-hour kirtan, when I got the 2 a.m. shift, I would notice that his light in his room was on. And he would be sitting, you know, underneath a custom-made mosquito net, translating. So, despite all the management and dealing with the society, he put his best time into writing his books. And to this day, the Prabhupada I know is in the books. One day in Vrindavan, actually, I was walking behind him, and there was a brahmachari reading the Bhagavatam, sitting on the steps. So as Prabhupada went by, he leant over and he tapped him on the head and said, good boy. Because there was a controversy with the management. They didn't like us to read. They wanted us to go out and collect or work or whatever. If you read, if you wanted to be a scholar, then you know there was some resistance. Good boy. I went to Mayapur. Prabhupada came in 77 for the Gopurnima festival. He gave classes the first couple of days, 2 or 3 days, but then he stopped coming down. He wasn't well. And after the festival, he was on his way to Puri, Bhubaneswar and Jagannath Puri, and he stopped in Calcutta for 2 days. So I was in Calcutta with him. Every evening he would have darshan. So I would sometimes sit, but it was only in Bengali, because he was dealing with some of the most important people in Bengal who were coming to see him. The morning that he was leaving, I was sitting at the veranda opposite his room, waiting to see him go. And Bhavananda Maharaj walked up to me and he gave me a big garland. And he said, Ananda, keep this garland. When I give you the signal, come into Prabhupada's room, you put it around his neck, and I'll put the chandan on his forehead. So I was very happy. I was thinking, wow, I get to put the garland. And 5 minutes went by, Bhavananda came back and he brusquely took away the garland. I changed my mind. My heart went from here to here, you know. I felt so bad I walked out. And Calcutta Temple is on the first floor. And there's a little mezzanine on top of the stairs where they keep the shoes. So we're sitting there lamenting. Suddenly I look up and I see Prabhupada coming out. And everybody's behind him. So he looks at me, I look at him. And we both look down at his shoes, which were on a cushion. So I took the shoes and I put them on his feet. And he walked away. And that was the last time I saw him. And the lesson I got there is that no one can stop your devotion to Guru, to Krishna. No one can come in your way. It doesn't matter how many obstacles they put. I would have been happy to put the garland. I was impeded from doing that. I got a better service of putting the shoes. He was the mouthpiece of Paramatma. He directly knew what was going on in your heart. When he spoke, it wasn't just him, it was Krishna speaking through him, telling me what I needed for my spiritual advancement. You know, knowledge is the most important thing. Like a judge, he makes his opinion when he has the knowledge from both sides. He hears the prosecution, he hears the defense, and then he makes a decision. Now, who's more knowledgeable than Krishna? He's in our heart. He knows what we're carrying, the baggage we're carrying from who knows how many millions of births. And Prabhupada was his direct representative, and it was very clear to me that he knew exactly what I needed for my spiritual advancement. Exactly. Even now that I'm struggling, I'm kind of isolated, I do give classes, and I love the devotees, I still feel that he's there, that, you know, the suffering I'm going through is for my own benefit. It's nothing more, nothing less. If anything, it's being diminished so that I can handle it. So that's one thing with Prabhupada. He could read your mind. And we know that even he said that his books were an expression of Krishna, actually. Krishna was writing. Like Baladev Bidya Bhushan with Govinda Bhasya. Govinda Dev instructed him what to write. And that's the quality of a guru, that he is that connected with Paramatma, with Krishna, that he cannot give you any bad advice.
Je anilo premadana koruna prachu